Hello everybody, and this is Chaos with Chaos Esports Productions, bringing you episode number 2 of this Back to the Basics series. Today, we are looking at pro production. Now, I do want to thank everybody for giving me all the wonderful comments on episode number 1. If you missed episode number 1, I'll go ahead and put an annotation here on the screen. Feel free to go check that out. Hotkeys and camera locations. Very, very highly under-talked about topic. So go check that out. Let me know what you guys think. And I hope you guys learned something from this. So, with the Back to the Basics series, we are going to go over one of the mechanics of Starcraft 2 and basically convey to you what needs to be worked, what you should be thinking about, and, how to execute. And then, once you finish watching, go out, play a game, work on those mechanics, come back and leave a comment in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you guys are practicing, how things are coming along in your laddering and what have you. So, pro production, today we're going to be looking at all the aspects of pro productions, when to build them, when not to, when to think about stopping, and so on and so forth. So, one thing that I like to say right off the bat is pro production in the early and mid game should be consistent. Constant pro production is what's going to keep you ahead, whether your opponent's being aggressive, whether your opponent's playing more economic. Keeping up that pro production is going to make sure that you'll never fall behind. So, let's talk about what can happen in the early game. Early game, your opponent has really one of two options. He can either cheese or play kind of your standard economic, looking for more of a mid-game timing push. In both cases, as long as you keep your pro production, you should be adequately set up to deal with really anything. If your opponent is, in this case, a PVZ, if you're dealing with a 6 pool, by keeping up your pro production, you're going to put yourself way ahead once that threat has been thwarted. Basically, your probe count is going to be so much higher than your opponent that unless he does something really, really cheeky, he's not going to be able to get back into the game, and you're always going to stay ahead. In the off chance that your opponent goes for more of an economic game, obviously you're going to scout this. You're going to say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and get my expansion up as well and play more of the economic type style game. Now, once this stage, the early game, has kind of gone away, come and gone, you start to think about, okay, what are my options as far as mid-game goes. Now, mid-game, most races have kind of one of two different options. You either hit a timing attack, which for Terran would be like a 10-push Marine Medevac Marauder push. For Protoss, it's usually like a 10-minute +1 warp gate, or maybe even a 7-minute warp gate push. Just some pressure. And basically you just needed to say, okay, when am I going to focus on building an army versus focus on getting up my economy? Now, in my opinion, timing attacks should be executed roughly around the time that you're fully saturated on two bases. What this allows for you to do is, if something goes wrong and the timing doesn't do anything, you can still fall back on some type of economy. Yes, you might not be ahead, yes, you might be a little bit behind, but it's something that you can recover from. If you stop building probes before you execute your timing, you're going to be way worse off and not have the production or income to maintain a proper defense against an immediate counterattack. So by going through and establishing when you're going to stop probe production, that's going to allow you to kind of create your own timings and create your own play style. Now, aside from the timing attacks, obviously you can play more of a late game. I want to have 3 bases, I want to have Colossus, I want to have tier 3 units, and then when I have a 3,000 mineral bank, then I'm going to start to think about putting on the pressure, doing this, that, and whatever. At that point in time, you need to say, okay, what is the optimal number of probes that I have in the late game, and then at what point do I sacrifice probes? So the late game composition for most players is roughly around 70 probes or 70 workers, and the rest of supply being straight up army. What this allows is, this allows for optimum 3 base saturation, as well as a strong enough defense that you're not going to immediately die if, you know, it turns into an all-in. Once you've reached this point, and you start to get further and further into the late game, you know, you're down to each player has 7 bases, and, you know, everyone's just booming as far as having a bank. That is really when you want to start to think, okay, what do I want to fall back on? How many probes do I really actually need for the rest of this game? And I would say 1 to 1.5 base saturation is probably more than adequate once a giant bank has already been established. What this does is this allows you to have a big enough army that if your opponent has chosen to keep too many probes, you're just going to be able to walk all over them. So having an understanding of when to stop building probes and when to continue building probes is very, very key, especially when you're in the lower leagues, bronze to platinum. Having that understanding will give you kind of a little bit of an edge to, you know, where you're at with respect to your opponent as you're scouting and things like that. So I think that's really all that I wanted to talk about as far as probe production goes, so I'll just go ahead and speed through the rest of this replay. This was just kind of an example. I was having a lot of trouble recording this while playing, so I figured I'd just play it and then record it. And, you know, you can see that I've been pretty consistent as far as probe production. I'm still building probes. Looking at the units tab, you know, we're about 11 minutes in, I'm at 55 probes, so probably not, you know, master's level probe production, but definitely up there. And basically, you know, I just wanted to use this as an opportunity to give you guys a feel for, you know, what are all the things that you should be thinking about as far as probes. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of Back to the Basics. Feel free to leave your comments in the comment section below. I'd love to know what you guys are thinking about the series. Anything that you guys would like me to talk about, feel free to leave that in the comments, and I will gladly do an episode on it. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I greatly appreciate you checking out some of my content. If you'd like to see my last episode of Back to the Basics, I'll go ahead and put a link to that in the description, as well as an annotation on the video. And feel free to check out some of my other content, subscribe, and if you enjoyed, feel free to like, and I hope I will see you guys all in the next game.